It's game week. We've got another exciting edition of pregame for you for your Charlotte football team. We are going down to Death Valley to take on the Clemson Tigers.
Woo!
We've got your boys Sean and Scott here to give you all the insight before we go take on the number one team in the nation. Scott?
Woo! I'm really happy. I'm really
woos?
pumped. Lots of woos. We're going to South Carolina. We're going to Death Valley. We're probably going to lose. But gosh darn it, we're playing a real team. We're playing the number one team in the country. We're on a big stage. And it's not like we're the first opening game against the number one team in the country. We're the fourth game of the season. It's big time. This is our last game before conference play. And talk about a game to get you ready for the rest of the season. Let's just play the defending national champions and number one team in the country. Easy one.
Yeah, it's definitely a big test for us, and interesting to come across Clemson. You know, it's not the first game of the season for them, so they're not potentially rusty. They've had three good teams come play them. Georgia Tech, Texas A&M, Syracuse handled all of them fairly easily, so they're definitely warmed up and ready to go. And this is going to, in my mind, either give us some confidence going into Conference USA play, saying, hey, we hung with the number one team in the country and had some bright spots, or could potentially wreck our confidence going into Conference USA play. And you know, we're riding high on three really good games to start the season, and now just maybe get a little down on ourselves, but depending on how the showing goes. But I wouldn't say I'm afraid. I feel like we've got a good shot to come in and make some noise. I'm obviously not going to say we're going to come in and beat the number one team in the country, but that would be amazing if we did.
Yeah, so let's start with the line, because I feel like the line really sets the bar of what your expectations should be. When we played App, I said Vegas was disrespecting us at 22.5 or whatever it was. We're playing Clemson, and I think Vegas has it just about right. They have the spread at 41.5, which is almost double what it was against App. That's 6 touchdowns for those of you out there that are not familiar with the spread. So that means they have us losing by 6 touchdowns against Clemson or more. My hope for the game, a win for Charlotte, would be covering that and staying competitive and losing by 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point, and I feel good with that type of performance. I will say, early picture here, I'm looking at some stats on betting from a few books that I can see, and there is some money coming in on Charlotte covering that. It actually right now is like 33-67, so kind of 1/3 Charlotte, 2/3 Clemson, which, you know, that's not too bad. That at least means we're in people's minds, or a few, maybe there's just a few Charlotte folks out there who really want us to cover, but somebody out there knows who we are and thinks we can cover 41.5 points.
I swear it wasn't me. I'm not winking right now.
But I will say, if you compare the offenses, and granted I know we're talking apples to oranges here because you know, Charlotte's played a FCS opponent, and then App State, and then UMass, who's potentially the worst FBS school this year, especially defense-wise. But stats-wise, you know, we're putting up 522 total yards of offense to their 544. So there is some glimmers of hope that if we could move the ball even moderately well compared to what we've done the past 3 weeks, we could score at least a few times. And then, you know, the defense is going to have a huge challenge trying to hold Clemson's offense down. Lawrence has already had a great start. He's thrown for 831 yards, but he has had a tendency to throw interceptions. He's got 5 on the season so far. So with the pressure we can get with Alex Highsmith up front and the rest of the defensive line, that could spell interception or two here, maybe some short fields that could give us an opportunity for a touchdown or two. It's going to be difficult. Ben DeLuca's out. We just got some really bad news. He is actually going to be out for the season. He has to have shoulder surgery. And then Jeff Gimmel, who went down last week at the UMass game, is going to be out for this game as well. No long-term prognosis on him yet, so he may be able to come back. But having two of your defensive captains be out at the same time while you're facing the number one team in the country means that our front four is going to have to put some pressure out there so that the QB doesn't have a ton of time to pass it and put pressure on our safeties and secondary.
Yeah. Well, I like the power of positivity. And we're normally a positive podcast, and we're always talking about how great Charlotte is and how we're going to cover the spread and all of that good stuff. I'm not going to lie, Sean. I'm not feeling good about this game. I'm excited about the game, and I hope that I'm trying to use some reverse psychology on myself. I could give you the pros and the cons. I look at Clemson's schedule, and I look at Georgia Tech, and they rolled over them. Georgia Tech isn't a great team. They lost to the Citadel last week, which is pretty bad. They paid the Citadel to beat them in overtime. So that's not great. They beat Syracuse, who got waxed by Maryland the week before, 60-20 something, right? So they're not great. But then I look at Texas A&M, who was ranked 12th in the country when they played them. They're still in the top 25. I believe they're at 17 right now. They only put up 10 points against Clemson in that game. And I would say they probably have a more high-power offense than we do, with the other two games not against Clemson putting up 41 points and 62 points respectively. I don't feel great about our chances. In my mind, the score I would predict is a 60-6 type game. Again, our special teams in 3 consecutive games this year has given up at least 1 touchdown. I don't see that improving against the best team in the country, where their special teams players probably could start just about anywhere. Our offense has been really good, but again, like you said, UMass isn't the greatest, and it looks like App has their own problems on defense. So let's see what happens when they play, again, the number one team in the country that hold Texas A&M to 10 points, and the other two teams to pretty low points as well, Syracuse to 6 last week. And our defense has bend but not break, but they give up the big plays. And who's going to get bigger plays than 5-star recruits on Clemson? So that's all of my negativity that I wanted to get out there. On the other side of the ball, and shout out to the Tar Heel fan that follows UNC Charlotte. You know who you are. He pointed out a great point about Dabo, and we've seen a lot of articles about his relationship with Will Healy and whatnot. I would think a coaching respect, he's not going to want to embarrass Coach Healy. At some point, he's just going to get the foot off the gas. And that could be our opportunity to not lose by 41.5.
Yeah, I had a couple conversations about that too, and here's my thinking on it. So there's one side of me that says Dabo.
I don't need to know the opposing team coach's name. Yeah. Dabo, whatever.
You're making them French, Dabo. That he would do that because he's that kind of guy, and he does have a track record of that. The only downside here is you're the number one team in the country right now, and the spread's 41.5, and whether the playoff committees want to say they look at stuff like that and how big you win by and all of those things, it factors in people's minds. If they have us in hand and are up 35-0 and take their foot off the gas and let us get a touchdown or never score, maybe that looks okay. But if they let us battle around and put up 2 touchdowns while they're taking their foot off the gas, that doesn't bode well for their number one in the country status. So I'm going to guess that the threshold for Dabo's niceness may be a little bit higher than 41 points on this one, just to ensure there's no cause for question at the end of the season when they're trying to figure out where they're seated in the playoffs.
I see your point there, but I also think I agree with you with just about any other team. But this isn't UCF where they're begging to get in the playoff and they're just on the cusp. This is the defending national champions that are ranked number 1 in the country. Whether they beat Charlotte by 3 touchdowns or beat Charlotte by 8 touchdowns, it really doesn't matter. As long as they go undefeated, they're probably still going to be the number 1 team.
That's what you think until Alabama goes undefeated and stomps everybody they play, and then they look and say, oh, well, Clemson had a couple games that were a little closer than Alabama's games. Then they go from 1 to 2 seed. So there's a lot remains to be seen. I mean, either of those teams could lose along the way too, but I would say that would be my only fear on the take the foot off the gas and keep it close. But either way, I mean, taking the foot off the gas and keeping it close, that's not a moral victory in my mind. I know Coach Healy said he doesn't do moral victories and this program should be coming out to compete every week. In my mind, if our cover of 41.5 points and keeping it semi-close is them just not trying, that's not a moral victory. Moral victory in my mind is they're trying and we're keeping it close, and they're having to try because we're keeping it close. I will say I was very impressed. I don't know how impressed Coach Healy was with this one, but earlier in the week they had a presser, and Jason Fouget, a safety of ours, was asked the question, are you coming down there to, just try, or are you coming down there to shock the world? And his answer was fairly quickly, shock the world, which is impressive. And I feel like as fans, we love hearing stuff like that. But, throwing out statements like that, you got to be able to back them up along the way. So if we're going to come down to shock the world, I hope the whole team's on board for that one.
Yeah, it also creates some bulletin board material for Clemson. You rather keep it light. Hopefully they take us lightly, kind of like how App did, and we can really punch them in the face when they're not ready for it.
Whoa. App didn't take us lightly. App's just not the team that people think they are.
Fair. And if they beat
and
Chapel
we're not
Hill,
the team that people think we are. We're
if
better
they beat
than
Chapel
the team
Hill
people
this Saturday, it really doesn't matter at this point because Chapel Hill showed who they are by losing to Wake Forest last week. But moral of the story is I agree with you about all of that, and that's not a moral victory if they take the foot off the gas. I was just going back to the spread of 41.5 and giving you my logic if they were to cover. Do I think they're going to cover? No. I think Clemson's going to stomp us. I think the final score is 60-6. I think the 62.5 over-under is an over because you got to keep the points there just in case Charlotte gets a touchdown or something with our couple field goals, or if Clemson just stomps us even harder. But I think they stomp us right out of the stadium.
You're locking in 60-6?
60-6 is my score.
I'm going to go with 72-17.
So you're also taking the spread, Clemson covering 41.5 and the over. You're giving us a few extra points and giving them a few extra points as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a high-scoring match. I think the over is lock, and I'm not sure that the high-scoring part of that comes from our side at all. Just being realistic.
Sure. Well, we will see what happens. If we do cover, I still expect us not to score a lot of points. I just expect Clemson to just take their foot off the gas or just not score as much. Maybe our defense plays better than expected, and our special teams doesn't give up any points. But again, we're super positive. We love the team. We always pick them. We're just trying to be realistic, and I hope to God that we are completely wrong on this, and we come back with our post game talking about how we took it to Clemson and we're the real deal.
Well, and we might not win the game, but we can have bright spots again. So do you got any offensive and defensive players in mind to be some good bright spots for us this game? I can go if you want me to.
Well, so let me tell you my thoughts here. Okay, I want to say Benny LeMay, but I honestly don't think Benny LeMay is going to do much. I think Clemson's defense and their film is focusing on shutting down the running game and specifically Benny LeMay. So I don't expect a lot out of him. I think he'll get a lot of touches, but I just don't see him doing a lot. And yeah, I think that kind of leans toward the quarterback position. And I know we've still had this debate on who's doing what. Is it Keene or is it Reynolds? I think Reynolds has to look like how Reynolds looked against App. I think he's got to be throwing 4 touchdowns and almost 300 yards passing with some big plays. I really think he's the guy to watch if we're going to do anything on offense. Does he not turn the ball over, and does he make big plays, whether it's with his feet or throwing the ball? But I think it's going to be a lot of throwing because I think Clemson's going to force him to stay in the pocket and really shut down our running game.
See, that leads me to believe Keene's going to get some more playing time this week because he can put the ball on the money a little bit better in the pocket. I honestly feel like Healy's approach may be flip-flop quite a bit this time. Maybe 2 series here, 3 series here, 2 series here between the two of them, just to kind of keep the defense off balance and not really know what look they're getting. There's not a lot of game tape on Brett Keene right now for the season because he hasn't had near as many snaps as Reynolds through the first few games. So he might try and take advantage of that and throw some plays out there that are more Keene-oriented that Clemson doesn't have any game tape on. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you predict any trickery, like a flea flicker or any kind of fun stuff like that, just because we're playing Clemson and why not, and how else are we going to get going?
I do think so. I think that if we're going to see it, we will probably see it from Michaelius Elder, who currently is leading the team in yards of receiving, 201 yards. And he's not even one of our starting receivers that we were looking at the beginning of the season. We were talking Victor Tucker, Cam Dollar, and then here comes Elder out of nowhere, averaging 67 yards a game right now, which is great. 18 yards of reception, and he's got some speed. He's a burner, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some reverses, end rounds out there, or even just trying to beat them downfield and catch them off balance, a couple random plays where they might not be expecting it. So that's my pick as a bright spot there on the offensive side. I think Elder's potentially going to have a good game. And then on the defensive side, I'm looking for Alex Highsmith to stick with being second in the country in sacks.
What a great pick there. That was you really thought outside the box on that one.
I think that his game this week, it's not a guaranteed he's going to have a sack, given that we're playing Clemson, and I think he's going to really show that he's kind of a step towards being pro-level talent this week. I think he's going to have a good week where he looks good, gets some good pressures on Lawrence, and if we create turnovers, much like the UMass game where he got his hands on the quarterback when that pick happened, I think he's going to be a key to actually generating some defense here for us and getting some stops/turnovers. So it might not be outside the box, but I think he's going to make the biggest impact on defense.
Yeah, in reality, to me, and that'll go back to my score, I think the biggest impact is going to be made by Cruz. And can we get him in any kind of position to take shots, and can he deliver on those? Can he make that 48-yard field goal? Things like that. And I think he will dictate how many points we really score, because I think Clemson is the classic bend but don't break. So maybe we'll get a big play and we get in field goal range, but I don't know how well we'll do and if we'll ever get in the end zone. But we could get some opportunities for Cruz, and if he can deliver like he did pretty much all of last year and so far much of this year, I think he will be our MVP for the game.
Too bad we don't have college fantasy football. Be drafting Cruz like crazy and giving him a good start this week.
He's definitely a start if you have college fantasy football, for sure.
So I think that is pretty much the ins and outs of the game that I had. Did you have anything else you wanted to cover, Scott?
Not really, Sean. I just hope that we get a good turnout. We will be in Clemson for the game, and we'll be at the alumni tailgate for those of you coming. So feel free, say hi, talk to us about the game, and hopefully we'll be a little bit more optimistic as we get there. I hope everyone's driving to work or driving to the game as we speak and getting fired up. bring the energy. I think if we can get loud, I think that'll help the team, and maybe they can put up an extra 7 points or 14 points. Again, I like to stay positive. I know we kind of got negative there, and we predicted some not so favorable scores. But let's hope that we are completely wrong, even though we've been so right so far this year. And it's a tight game. Maybe Clemson 42, Charlotte 38 kind of game. Just right in there, hanging with the big boys.
Changing your guess now?
No. I'm just trying to give people some hope on the way going.
I mean, again, the hope is that Clemson could blow most Group of 5 teams out of the water if they want to. So the hope is that we don't have that happen, right? Like, you come in, even at our 2 score predictions, that's still a pretty good showing for a Group of 5 Conference USA team against the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just hoping for us to survive the first quarter and keep it competitive through that, and at least keep it interesting for those in the stands for at least the first half, and then we'll see what happens and give us some hope. Try to get some sustainable drives, not just 3-and-outs, turnovers, big plays. I don't need to see that.
Well, the good news is, we stayed to the end, so after all the Clemson fans leave, traffic hopefully won't be too bad.
Good point. Another bright spot. Thanks for pointing that out, Sean, of course.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I hope everyone's pumped up. I hope they wear green.
And go Niners.